Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri, and our next guest is, in my opinion, one of the great character actors we have. That really just means one of the great actors we have. Whether it's fast talking through politics on The West Wing, creeping us out with murderous white privilege and Get Out, or The Handmaid's Tale, or Billy Madison, or Adventures in Babysitting, he's been asked to do that a lot. Bradley Whitford makes everything he appears in better, and his new NBC comedy, Perfect Harmony, is no exception. Let's take a look.
That was quite a bender you were on, Art.
How do you know my name?
Arthur Cochran, chair of Princeton's music department.
I am retired.
Oh, yeah!
We're getting ready for a choir competition. We need your help.
Matthew McConaughey, you don't need to puff out your chest like you're signaling your wife you're ready to mate. You slouch. It's caused by fear of confrontation, which is why you stayed married to a man who let a snake loose in the house.
Did you read my diary?
I wrote it. But you can't stop staring at her. Why don't you ask her out?
If I'm not honest with my feelings, I won't be honest with my music.
What's Eat Me D?
Life is short. Let's use this precious time to make some beautiful music. You're singing the wrong part. You're an alto.
I've never sung alto.
Things change as women get older.
The you say?
Everybody, please welcome Bradley Whitford. Hey. Thank you so much for being here. I'm
My
such a
pleasure.
fan of your work.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
I have to ask, were you surprised that they went out to you for this sort of heartwarming, big-hearted role following the last few years of, as I think I said in the intro, murderous white privilege?
Yeah, creepy white male privilege has sort of become my wheelhouse, I guess, a little bit.
Have you ever questioned why that is? Because that is not you. You are actually a fairly politically conscious, socially conscious, thoughtful person who is also just a very good actor. Have you ever wondered why, like, people go out to you for that?
Yeah, it makes me insecure. yeah, it's I've got, there's like a Ted Bundy thing like going on that I'm presenting one way. But I don't know. I mean, I'm like a Quaker theater geek. I mean, I don't know how I get these emotionally violent parts, but they're really fun to do.
Right.
They're really fun.
So when they talked to you about Perfect Harmony, were you surprised?
Well, I sort of went, Jason Weiner, who is one of the creative forces behind Modern Family, which is this show that I thought was terrific. I was really wanting to do a comedy, and he said he wanted to work with me, and he introduced me to Leslie Lake Webster, who is from Kentucky, whose grandfather basically went through a version of this experience. Completely broken characters. This guy is such a politically incorrect nightmare. He's destroyed his career. His wife has just died. He has a bright future behind him. And those characters are really fun because there's a recklessness to it. And we also so she told me this story, and it was personal to her, and there's kind of an authenticity to it that I liked. I am from a part of the country like Kentucky, Wisconsin, which is always portrayed in a kind of sort of condescending, one-dimensional way. And we wanted to put radically different human beings together, especially at this lovely moment in our history where we're all getting along so well. We wanted to put radically different people together and show in a non-preachy way how with humor and music, it may be possible to transcend that. We're not serving civic vegetables. That's not why we're doing it. We're doing it just to make a flat-out comedy. But that's part of the sort of emotional underpinning of it.
What parts are more fun to play when it comes to this character? Is it when he's politically incorrect and sort of saying the things that nobody else would say, or the moments where sort of against his natural inclination, his heart warms and he decides to help people?
They're both sort of equally joyous. There's an East Coast snob version of Archie Bunker. That's really fun to play. That's kind of edgy. It's not cruel, but it's kind of condescending, and that's really fun to riff on.
It's funny. It's like whereas Archie Bunker was condescending to the sort of left-leaning liberals and changing
I'm
dynamics
being
of the time, you are
totally
the opposite.
condescending to Southern culture, to religious culture. I'm an atheist in a church who doesn't believe a word of it, so I'm condescending about people's faith.
Are you an atheist?
Am I?
Yeah.
Yes.
Same.
Yes. I was raised Quaker. My mother, who I was very, very close to, lived a very long life. But I was raised by a woman whose only dying wish was that her obituary would say, "Proud atheist." So
That's amazing.
So
that's a woman after my heart.
that's what I grew up with. But there's something else about it. But I found real meaning and community growing up in a Quaker church. Quakers are interesting because there's no dogma, there's no priest, there's nobody. It mediates your interpretation of the divine. And then I became part of a church community. There's a wonderful kind of church in Pasadena where I live called All Saints, where I really became sort of part of this community, even though I was welcome there, even though I'm an atheist. And one thing that really bothers me culturally is the only religious voices we hear are voices of exclusion and condemnation. And there was a whole other world of religious experience and community that is found in those venues that is very inclusive, and I wanted to put. I wanted to get that sort of idea of a different religious experience out there. But we just have fun with it. I mean, we're not serving civic vegetables here. This is a comedy. And it's been a blast. You asked about those. I do love the contrast in this guy. I've been extraordinarily lucky in terms of the different kinds of roles I get to play. And the most interesting I'm finding as I get older are the ones with the widest discrepancies. And
in their behavior in the show or between you and them?
In their behavior. I mean, I feel it on Handmaid's Tale. There's a lot of contradiction. And I think when I was younger, these parts are really fun to do at this time in my life because as you get older, you realize that people are so complicated and multidimensional, and if you get to act a lot, you kind of get the confidence to sort of, rather than narrowing in on what a character is. In the last couple of years, it's been this fun experience of widening the aperture, and it feels liberating and fun. And it's also fun, like Get Out is a different thing, but multiple things are going on always with that guy. And that's also true of Handmaids in a much different situation, but that is the stuff that's really interesting to me.
Have you found that, excuse me, as you've gotten older and you've taken on a variety of characters and different characters, that it always kind of comes back to you as the person, that acting is often, the best acting is sort of a, how do you make this person more like you rather than how do you make you more like the character on the page? Yeah,
there's different, I always laugh when I start to talk about like it's more productive for me to not think of acting as like, I don't know what the acting process is, because it feels like a totally different thing. You know, when you're doing a sitcom or when you're doing the guy in Get Out, and I've learned to not get insecure about that, but sort of embrace that each of these things, you know, should be approached differently. You are always pressing yourself through the material, and it's, you know, it's one of the paradoxes of acting. Is, and one of the privileges of it is that when you're being someone else, you're actually finding what you connect to. It's almost a self-exploration while you're pretending to be somebody else.
Was there, did you have a lot of fear going into Get Out in terms of finding things out about yourself in relation to that character?
You know, I distinctly remember there was no bigger fan of Jordan Peele as a performer. And of course he'd, you know, written a lot of the stuff on Key and Peele. I was just obsessed with Key and Peele. And I kept saying to my agent, like, just let me do like a background cross in one of those skits. And then it was going off the air and I was really upset. And then I heard that he might be interested in me. And then I heard that I got it, and my agent had sort of been withholding the script from me. They're very secretive about the scripts. And I was like, I don't have to read it. Like, I will do, you know, yard work, you know, for Jordan Peele. I just love him.
And was your agent like, you might want to read this?
You might want to read it. And I read it, and my jaw, I came out of my office and said to my wife, I said, this is... I haven't read anything like this. I think it's brilliant because, as Jordan talks about, horror is a way for us to process things that we can't talk about, and we certainly are really bad at talking about race. And for him to press that through the horror genre, I thought was really brilliant.
Then on the face of it, it's also just an incredibly well-structured, brilliant script.
Yes, it is. Now, what you don't know, it's very hard to tell if a script is going to work. I mean, you don't. This was an extremely low-budget movie, $4.5 million, which is insane. 21-day shoot, which is insane. And when you're reading the script, like when you go to the sunken place, you're not imagining that we are going to be able to pull it off. It is also dangerous. I did have the thought, you know, if you don't get the tone right and you're out on the limb as the gleeful racist, that could be really awful. So there was certainly a danger to it. We had no idea. Jordan had no idea. While we were shooting that movie, the whole time I was saying, you're an idiot, man. Why are you making a movie? At that point, he could have been set creatively and financially for the rest of his life with a television deal. Movies are really hard to get done. Here's this guy who you adore as a performer who's trying to do the most difficult thing, which is a low-budget movie. They never register. They rarely register. We make thousands that you never see.
Even great ones. I mean, Get Out, there is a certain amount, as great as Get Out is, and as much as the success is owed to how great it is, there's a certain amount of success that's owed to just luck and landing at a specific moment and hitting the right way.
Yeah, but I cannot overstate the mind-boggling brilliance to me. It is a miracle to make a movie. It is a miracle to get through directing your first movie, to hit it out of the park and almost create a new genre of socially conscious thrillers, or reinvigorate that genre. he invited me to Sundance. I remember we were looping that movie, and he calls me, and I said, "How is it?" And he's like, "It's really fucking good. It's really good." Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please do.
He's like, it's really fucking good, and I'm like, you're in the cult. You've drank the Kool-Aid.
It's your movie.
It's your movie. You have to think that. And he's like, no, I really think it's kind of pretty good.
He'd be like, this sucks. Will you come do more work on it with me?
And then he invited me to Sundance, and there was this midnight screening, and I had never in my acting life seen a souffle rise like that. I had no idea how sure a hand he had. I hadn't even put stuff together, like, that the guy, running, I didn't even, while we're shooting it, I'm not even putting together the Jesse Owens of it all. I hadn't seen all the sort of Easter eggs that he laid in there of separating the colored cereal from the white milk and all of these sort of amazing
That's what I mean. It is, like, just on its face, the script itself is so beautifully plotted and structured, and everything gets tied up in a wonderful way. I'm wondering, you've been at this for a number of years now. Have you ever been part of another script that felt that good on the page? Everything's tied up really well. It's a well-written script, and then somehow it doesn't. I mean, you don't have to name the movie, and then somehow it doesn't work when you see the movie in the end. Like,
Yes.
and you're like, how did that happen? It was a great script.
Yeah. Well, the truth is,
Kind of tell when you're shooting that that's happening.
no. You honestly, you can't. I didn't finish shooting Get Out and think this is going to be a culturally significant hit. It never occurred to me. I thought it was incredibly clever. That I loved Jordan. One of the most tangible energies on that set was he is an absolutely beloved, humble, kind, visionary talent, and everybody wanted it to become, a little cult movie, that might make, $20 million or something, and then it just went nuts.
He's a genuinely good guy, though. I will say that as well about him.
Oh,
I've interviewed him a couple times, and they're quick interviews, but every now and then you're like, oh, this is a genuine, like, everybody around him loves being around this man.
Everybody loves to be around him. He is kind, brilliant. He'll be. It's not precious. He'll be direct you as if he's being Obama for large swaths of the movie.
Did you enjoy that?
Yes, I did.
You are.
By the way, it's funny because I didn't even realize that saying like I would vote for Obama for a third term was even remotely funny.
Because you were already saying it.
Yes. I in fact I'm not sure, but I think it may have been one of those like unconscious. It's probably why he cast me. I think I may have said it to him.
He heard you and it's like, oh,
yeah.
Script, that's good.
But he told me he just wanted to see like Josh Lyman remove someone's cranium. I think that was what he was looking for.
You are very politically engaged and politically active. You have been for the entirety of your career. What has it felt like yesterday and today, now that the House has opened an impeachment inquiry? Not an actual impeachment, but an inquiry. What has that felt like for you? What do you think?
I think it's long overdue. I mean, we are impeaching him for reaching out to a foreign government and asking them to interfere with an election. And
sounds familiar.
Yeah, I kind of remember him staring down the barrel of a camera and asking Russia to interfere. I think it's long overdue. I think he's a racist. I think he is a misogynist. I think he's a sexual assault. It is mind-boggling to me that the Republicans. I mean, he's a damaged human being.
Yes.
and it's quite dangerous. And that can happen. That people will not stand up to that is unforgivable. And look, I'm a progressive Quaker liberal. I objected to everything George Bush did. But what is unprecedented is this. It broke George Bush's heart. It broke Clinton's heart. It broke George Bush's heart. It broke Obama's heart that he could not bring people together. This guy, and it's quite mentally ill, thrives on division. And
he has no intention of bringing people together. It's never been part of his modus operandi as the president.
No, he's and it's always funny to me because people are saying, "Hey, you're an uninformed celebrity. Shut up, stop talking about politics." And this guy is the epitome of the uninformed celebrity, and it's just mind-boggling to me that like a spray-tanned, rich kid is the hero of working people. It's insane.
And I remember everybody around him to inform him, and he's just, you can see him hearing them trying to inform him, going, and just retaining none of it.
Yeah, none of it. He's not. It should be completely insane. He does not. We have a president who doesn't read. Right. It's insane.
What's your favorite book? The Bible. All of it. All of it.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part? Oh, I love all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 Corinthians.
Do you have a favorite psalm? I love all of it.
Yeah, and it's bizarre. It's reassuring for us to think of this as an aberration. I think we will recover from this. I really do. But it's not an aberration. It is an extension of the values that the Republican Party has embraced. They have been fighting for a long time to take away women's agency, women's access to health care. They have been doing that. It's also happening all over the world. So it's dangerous to think of this guy as an aberration. I think we really have to look at the conditions that are creating the opportunities for these white nationalists, because it's happening all over the world, and it's terrifying. Look, we're not living. It would diminish the unspeakable suffering of the people who were victims of the Nazis. We're not there. I'm not saying that, but I never truly understood how that possibly could have happened. I could hear about it, but I never understood how an inclusive culture that was happening, certainly in Berlin and everything, how that could give way to this kind of madness. And we all see it now. Yeah, it can happen, and it can happen here.
I feel like I never understood that until I watched a mainstream media, like a CNN or an MSNBC, give equal weight to.
Well, here's what's really.
That's when I go, oh, this is how it happened.
Well, I used to call this like the Geraldo effect.
Yeah.
This bullshit idea of sort of equal value, and Geraldo used to have the first half of the show would be a bunch of Holocaust survivors.
Second half would be skinheads.
Second half would be skinheads. I
guess it's not funny.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
And
remarkably stupid.
For all of their, I actually think the media. I actually think it has a conservative bias. I mean, look at the narrative right now. We have a president who is openly pursuing a white nationalist agenda. You turn on MSNBC, and the entire discussion will be, are the Democrats too radical?
Right.
It's insane. they're not comparable.
I think sometimes even worse than that is the conversation of like political gamesmanship. Instead of actually talking about the thing that has happened and what that means, saying something like, well, is it going to help the Democrats that they're doing an impeachment? How is this going to how is this going to fan out in the 2020 election? As if this is a sport of some kind and not
Right.
like a crime was actually committed and that's what we should be talking about.
Right. They cover the horse race of it, and they perpetuate, in a way that I think is actually unfair, this narrative that all politicians are, they're not all the same.
And they're all playing a game.
Yeah. I don't think that is true. I don't think Sherrod Brown is playing a game. I don't think Obama was playing a game. I think they were, genuinely understanding that politics is the way you create your moral vision. It's not just sports. And the way it's covered now, those CNN panels that you hear where they try to get maximum confrontation. I mean, it's interesting how the values of entertainment sort of seep into our public discourse and destroy it. They want conflict. Anderson Cooper will, let's say we're talking about healthcare. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring a predictable liberal who wants single payer.
The Alan Combs of the argument.
Right. And then we're going to have, a radical right-wing free market person. We're going to encourage them. I've been on these shows. They encourage you to embrace conflict because it's good television. The worst, you will never hear, I don't know. That's a good point. I'll have to think about that. Mm-hmm. That is bad television. So what you get is you're sitting at home. It feels civic-y because you're watching Anderson Cooper talk about healthcare, but they're not actually talking. They're presenting publicity to each other. And at the end, Anderson, shrugs and goes, well, we'll continue this discussion later, as if it is not possible to come to any conclusion or move forward.
Right, as if there are no facts in the discussion whatsoever, or there have been no studies that prove any points.
Yes, yeah, it's completely it's completely insane, and it's part of the reason that Trump was able to become president.
Because one of the things that they've been so good at, I'm sure we have to get off this topic at some point, but one of the things that they've been so good at is by having people like Rudy Giuliani or Kellyanne Conway go on these shows and give a punching bag to these anchors who can then publicize these clips and saying like, Chris Cuomo slams Kellyanne Conway as a liar, but she still got her point across and she still got to sort of dilute whatever the conversation was with disinformation while he gets a big clip of saying, I don't think so, Kelly, you're a liar. And then that becomes it's all publicity for all of them at this point.
Yeah, I would encourage, there's a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death.
Great book.
By Neil Postman, which talks about how television actually totally destroys our ability to have, civil discourse. Why are they good looking? Why are there theme songs? Why
is Chris Cuomo a bodybuilder?
Yeah. And super chipper.
Yeah. It was like the tightest t-shirts at Hurricanes.
And why at the end do we get the sherbet of the human interest story?
Oh, yeah.
So we'll talk about like kids in cages and then go, and now this, 2 puppies were rescued so that we can all sort of leave it. It's disorienting. It's crazy making. It created Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was able to exploit it. And we need to be sort of aware of that.
But this one kid in the cage was able to get a law degree while living inside the cage.
Yes. Yeah. He met a puppy.
The pursuit of happiness.
Yeah. My God.
I think we have a couple questions from the audience. Who has a question?
Oh, no.
Right here.
Hi.
Hi, I'm a big fan of The West Wing, and congratulations, 20th anniversary just a few days ago. My question is, so in today's political climate, what do you think we can take away from the show in preparing for the upcoming presidential election?
You know, it's interesting. There's a lot of the show, like, I get creeped out watching myself, so I haven't watched a lot of it, but I've had to, like, for the podcast. It's really interesting. Aside from gay marriage, you would think we had made no progress on anything. We have the same immigration arguments, we have the same gun arguments, we have the same public education arguments. The thing that, a couple of times today, people have said to me a version of all politicians are fucked up. I do not, I don't believe that. And what I loved about that show and what is unique about that show is that it is not, it's not a cynical take. You know, Aaron is sort of, like Bruce Springsteen is not cynical at all. You know what I mean? It's all heartfelt, and Aaron is that way when he's writing about these issues. And I want, I was really glad that I was able to be part of a show that honored public service and honored the political process, which is very easy to become cynical about. But again, it is the only way we create our moral vision. And our problem on the left is we think it's culture. But will and grace won't help you if you have a pre-existing condition. The way you create your moral vision is through politics, and ironically, the right understands that. I want people on the left, we lose an election. First of all, we vote to express our political purity, which is the most privileged fucking thing you can do. Because who can't afford your privilege is the 16-year-old pregnant girl in Mississippi who has no access to health care. You have to vote strategically. They vote strategically. And I get heartbroken. If we lose an election, we go, system's corrupt, I'm not going to participate. They lose an election, they open a think tank, and they run for the school board. And by the way, they've stolen the Supreme Court. So we have to get much more engaged, and I hope that's the legacy of the show.
Thank you.
Can I ask you, I love The West Wing, and you've worked with Sorkin a number of times. Can I ask you a critical question about The West Wing?
Sure, yeah, attack me.
In retrospect, this idea, sometimes The West Wing perpetuates this idea that all you need is logic in the room, and oftentimes the sort of liberals or the Democrats will win out in an argument against a far right-winger by essentially explaining to them what is right about their argument, and you will have a happy ending in the show or a moment where the right-winger will be like, I never thought about it that way, which permeates this idea that politics isn't about political power, which essentially it is. And for so long, the left has felt like the left has thought, we can explain to them that we're right. We can teach them that we're right. And I feel like we've learned in the last, really since the Tea Party, that we can't. It's actually about political power, and it's about voting, and it's about being strategic, as you just said.
Yeah, I mean,
wish fulfillment that we all have.
There was definitely, it was funny, I used to get really defensive about it because, they were always saying, the show's a fantasy. And I was like, yeah, it's a fantasy,
Well,
but
it's TV.
Yeah, well, it's a television show.
You have to tell stories.
Yeah. Otherwise it's just C-SPAN.
It's not a Frederick Wiseman documentary about politics.
Yeah, exactly. But they used to say, it's a fantasy, and I would say, actually, first of all, I know a bunch of people who worked closely with Bill Clinton, and they really believed in him and believed in his mission. I knew a bunch of people who worked closely with George Bush. There are 6 people surrounding these guys. Even this moron has people around him who really believe in the mission. And I remember I got into trouble once because we were always up against The Sopranos, and I was like, no, you want to know what a fantasy is? Like a mobster in therapy. That's a fantasy. But yeah, no, I think that's, it brings up the old quandary, which I think is basically what West Wing at its best was about. I mean, the interesting thing was, for all the sort of wish fulfillment and everything, we never got anything done. We got very little of what we wanted done, and And
So it was a documentary about democratic politics.
yes, about. It was funny, but people always ask, could you do it about like a Republican administration? And I'm like, no, because Republicans aren't funny and they're not sexy, and you kind of squirm when they flirt.
Much closer to The Sopranos.
Yes. And the show could, like, you couldn't end, their mission is not heroic. You could not have, me toasting with CJ in the Oval Office saying, hey, we're drilling on protected land. We got tax cuts, for the billionaires. It's not an heroic mission. I think you're right. We, ironically, a lot of people, we should be better at storytelling. A way for me to understand, by the way, Trump is the aesthetic of professional wrestling. Mm-hmm. He was obsessed with it. A lot of spray tan, hot chicks wandering around, outrageous accusations. You always have to be, an enemy, like the Squad. We're going to get the Squad. It's a way for me to understand, and I think a lot of his supporters have a similar level of suspension of disbelief as they watch this show happen, which allows them to support somebody I think they otherwise wouldn't be able to.
Right. Oh, next, one more question.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for coming to talk to us today. I'm really excited about Perfect Harmony, and it seems like one of those shows that's going to be like a really heartwarming, hopeful type thing, which West Wing was for me growing up and still is something I go back to now. And just like when I'm feeling shitty about the world, it's always like, okay.
It's like progressive porn, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
It's reassuring.
So, like you said, there's it's weird for you maybe to go back and watch it because you're amazing in it. Is there anything that you love to watch that kind of you can go back to and kind of find that solace and it helps you become hopeful about moving forward in today's world?
Yeah, I mean, now it's like a triage situation. I mean, the other thing I feel about in this era politically, it's like an Al-Anon situation. It's like we are forced into a relationship with daddy who's nuts, like nuts, and Congress mommy is like, get in the car, and we're like, I don't think it's real safe, And now, like, honestly, I just try to get myself to sleep with something. I was real late. What do I stream and watch? Is that what you're asking? I watch tons of documentaries, but when the Trump madness is at its height, I stream a lot of comedies.
Thank you.
Have you always been a big comedy fan?
Yeah. And I've always wanted to do more comedies than I've been able to do.
You've done a few. I mean, you've got a few classics under your belt. You've got Adventures in Babysitting. You've got Billy Madison as well, which is a classic comedy.
Yes.
You're Adam Sandler's first villain.
I am his first villain. I always remember my agent going, well, you can do it. Nobody's going to see it. And, until West Wing, it was probably the first line in my obituary.
Well, no, I mean, I feel like Billy Madison, no one really did see it until it came out on video, right? It was
a weirdly big. It was like the #1 movie.
Really?
When it came out.
Oh wow!
It didn't start in obscurity.
Oh, for some reason, I was young. I had always imagined that it was like one of those sort of like on home video is where it really picked up.
It was a big theatrical hit. It's very weird if you have my job because these things, you kind of thought they'd go away when we were making them. When we made West Wing, it was only possible it would be shown twice.
Right.
And then you'd have to make an appointment at the Museum of Broadcasting. So it is really intense to see like generations kind of rediscovering it. And there's a lot of people who who really use it as therapy.
20 years later, there's someone who's like, in season 4, episode 3, Mr. Whitford, you said.
Oh, like people know the names of the I don't know the names of the episodes, and they'll like I don't know, I don't remember any of it.
Like, I'm sorry, I got those sides that morning. I went and did the scene, and then I went home.
Total chaos. There are people who like memorize episodes, or know somebody. I don't know if they're in here. Said, I have Josh Lyman's birthday. Is that you? And was that on the show? Well, that's because it's my birthday. I was
gonna say, do you even know what Josh Lyman's birthday is? But since it's your birthday,
did. I had no idea.
Perfect Harmony is a wonderful show. Congratulations! It's
Thanks.
so funny.
It's a blast.
You're so good at it.
Such
The
a
rest of
joy.
the cast is amazing
Incredible.
as well.
Angel, these guys are hilarious. She's an angel. It's we've had so much fun, and in my experience, when it's fun to make, it's fun to watch.
I agree. I agree.
Wow.
100%.
That's a good line.
It premieres this week on NBC, right?
Yeah, this week.
This week it premieres on NBC, and watch it. If you're a fan of Bradley Whitford, you're gonna love the show. Bradley Whitford, everybody, let's hear it.
Thank you.